What's up, everyone? So I wanted to share my personal experiences with overreaching and overtraining, the symptoms of both of them, the causes of both of them, as well as the solutions to both of them. If you're already overtraining or you're already overreaching beyond what is useful, how to fix this terrible situation. So first of all, a little bit of background. So anything you can do in the weight room, in the gym, on the track, when you're running, any kind of endurance sport, this is a stress. And your body will attempt to adapt to this stress. So if you're doing a skull crusher, this is stressing the triceps. So you do the exercise for how many sets, how many reps, whatever, and then you give yourself the opportunity to recover, and your muscles get bigger and stronger. So in the short term, if you manage the amount of stress, this can actually allow you to improve, to get bigger and stronger, or have more endurance, or be able to run faster for longer. However, it's important to note that you need to manage this stress. If you do too much stress for too long with not enough recovery, you will not improve. So what happens if you take 3 hard days in a row with no recovery, no days off? Well, your performance will actually probably go down in the short term. Like if you hit your biceps really hard 3 days in a row, on the 4th day, you are almost certainly going to be weaker than the first day if you truly trained hard with plenty of volume, plenty of intensity, and going close to failure, simply because you're not giving yourself a chance to recover. However, if you train hard 3 days in a row and then give yourself a few days of recovery, you can actually get better. And this is called short-term overreaching. So you train really hard for a few days, then you take a few days off, and you can get a nice super compensation effect. And this honestly can be a good way to stimulate progress, especially for more advanced lifters. If you are really wanting to put size on a certain area, or you're wanting to, gain in endurance if you're a runner or some other athlete, hitting it really hard for 2 to 4 days in a row with no recovery can actually be an excellent way to really break through a plateau. And I think this is a very underrated way of improving. However, what happens if you don't take recovery? So you get to that 3rd day and you're like, let's keep going. Screw it. Let's just keep training hard. Well, you're going to keep digging that ditch, and you're actually not going to really give yourself that recovery that you need to improve. So if you go on day after day after day, this is where you're going to get into long-term overreaching. And this is where you're not actually going to improve. So you won't actually see this super compensation effect because you're just going into that realm where you get stale and just burnt out, and it's no longer a stimulus that your body can adapt to. It's just too much for too long. And if you do this for months and months and months, where you're just burning yourself into the ground, you're training beyond your recovery capacity, this is where it leads to what is called overtraining syndrome. And this is where you have severe disruptions to your immune system, so you're going to get sick all the time, to your hormone levels, so your testosterone is going to be super low, to your mood, you're going to be irritable, you might get depression. And there are some people, mostly elite athletes, who just train themselves into the ground, and it actually ruined their career. They trained too hard for too long without any recovery, and they just destroyed themselves. And they could have been, an Olympic medalist, but they just didn't manage their training very well. They were too obsessive, and they just trained themselves into the ground. So my experience with overtraining is mostly when I was a distance runner. So I was running 70, 80, 90 miles a week. All of it was hard. I would never take any recovery days, any recovery runs. I was training twice per day, 3 times per day, high volume, high intensity, high frequency, just destroying myself, just running myself into the ground. And honestly, it was just stupid. I would wake up each day and I would just feel like a train hit me. I just felt like I got hit by a bus or something. Every joint in my body would ache. And I couldn't sleep very well. I had no appetite, or I was super hungry. And, I would say to myself, just take a recovery day. You're tired, you're fatigued. The literature says you should recover. Just recover. And then, I'd go and I'd drink some coffee, I'd wake up a little bit, and I'd say to myself, just go for a recovery run. Don't take the day off. Just go and run 2 or 3 miles. Very, very easy. And so I said, okay, I'll put on my shoes. I'll go out. I'll jog a little bit. So I'd go and I'd start jogging and I'd feel like crap. All my joints would hurt, and I would feel like an old man just trying to run and not being able to, be coordinated or feel like I was strong. But, I would warm up, and after a few minutes, I would feel a little bit better, and the pain would go away, and, my feet wouldn't hurt as much, my knees would warm up, and my hips, and everything would feel a little bit better, and I would start to increase the pace. Like a little demon was on my shoulder just saying, faster, faster, faster. And I knew that I should hold back, that I should just recover and not run so damn hard because it was not in my best interest. And then, 10 miles later, I was just, sprinting along and running and doing intervals and then hill sprints. And then the next day, I'd feel like crap. I'd feel like another bus came by and hit me. And this went on for months and months. And, I would get irritable. My sleep was horrible. And my performance suffered. I was never consistent when I wanted to race. And I think it's important to realize the importance of recovery. It really is crucial, and you can only benefit from as much training as you can recover from. If you can only recover from 100 work units, you can maybe benefit from doing 150 for a short period of time, but then you need to dial it back down to 50 work units to balance that out. And if you don't balance that out, if you keep going 150, 150, 200, 150, that's going to have negative effects. You won't be able to recover, you won't be able to perform like you want to perform, and you will get worse. This is particularly true in endurance sports, where overtraining is very common, but it's true in bodybuilding as well. If you do too much, you will go backwards. So let's go over some of the symptoms of overtraining or of overreaching. Overreaching and overtraining are very similar. They are the same thing, but just to different degrees. So overreaching in the short term is just a small little chunk of too much work. Overreaching in the long term is just going to be more time in that overreached state. And then overtraining syndrome is going to be what happens when you overreach for far, far too long. The first symptom is going to be poor sleep. So this is something that I experienced. I would wake up every 90 minutes. So if I went to sleep at 10:30 p.m., I would wake up at midnight. I would wake up at 1:30 a.m., 3 a.m., 4:30 a.m., and then 6 a.m., and I couldn't go back to sleep. And this is when I noticed that my sleep cycle is 90 minutes. I would never wake up for very long. Sometimes I wouldn't remember it, but it would always happen. I would always wake up exactly every 90 minutes. And ironically, this is something that you need to recover. You need quality sleep to recover. However, if you're overtraining, it disrupts your sleep. So you can get in this situation where it's like a vicious cycle, where you're training too much, you need sleep, you need every second of sleep you can get, but you're getting less quality sleep because you're in this hormonally disrupted state. So if you're training really hard and you're noticing the quality of your sleep going down, I would say this is a huge red flag, because you can go down into this spiral very, very quickly. So if you're training hard and you're getting disrupted sleep, that is a big red flag. Another one is going to be irritability and other personality changes. I guess they're not really personality changes, but it's just how you react to some things. So when I was, training too hard, I would be very irritable. I would be very anxious. Things would get me upset, and I'm usually a very sort of laid-back, relaxed person. But when I was in this state, you're in this fight-or-flight state where you're always on. You're always triggered, and it's very easy to get upset or to get emotional about some things. Another one is just how you feel when you wake up. If you wake up and you feel pretty fresh, you're probably fresh. If you wake up and you feel super groggy and you feel like a train hit you, and you just can't think properly in the first 10 or 20 minutes, that's probably a good sign that you're on the way to overreaching. Another one is heart rate. So if you take your heart rate in the morning when you're still in bed, and then you take your heart rate after you get up, that variability can be very telling. Because you're in this fight or flight state, when you get up, your heart rate might skyrocket. It might go from like 40 beats per minute to 70 beats per minute, just because, again, you're in this hormonally mediated fight or flight state. Another big one is going to be soreness or joint pain. So getting sore muscles is common. After a squat session, your knees might ache a little bit, which is normal. But if you are always hurting, you're always aching, and your body just takes forever to warm up when you're lifting, that is a pretty good sign that you've been doing too much. And this is mostly from systemic inflammation. So again, a little bit of inflammation is okay. It's actually good, as it can help bring blood into the area and help you recover. However, too much, especially systemic inflammation, is not going to be good. This is where it actually impacts your health, it impacts your ability to recover, and it's almost like your body is overreacting to the training stress just because there's too much of it, and you never give yourself that opportunity to recover and get better. Another one is no morning wood. So obviously this just applies to the fellas, but if you wake up and you are completely flaccid, shall we say, all the time, it's a pretty good sign that your testosterone is low, which is definitely going to happen if you are overtrained or if you are overreaching in the long term. Another one is libido. If you never think about sex ever and you're training really, really hard, you're probably overdoing it. If you're training the proper amount, it should give you the other effect. You should be feeling pretty good. Another big one is water retention. So if you're training hard and you're noticing a lot of water retention, this is probably going to be from the excess cortisol, which is a stress response hormone. So especially if you're doing a high volume of training and you're not giving yourself enough recovery time on the big movements like the squat, the deadlift, the bench press, and if you're combining it with endurance training, so if you're doing a lot of cardio, if you're cutting for a show, you might notice that you retain water. And this might be in the belly, this might be in the face, but you're going to notice this sort of puffy, bloated look, which is not attractive and is also a sign that you're probably overdoing things. Similarly, acne, or if you are noticing your skin is less clear, this is also going to be a sign of cortisol, of water retention, and just stress in general. Most people who have acne, they know that stress is going to be one of the biggest causes of a breakout or of a flare-up of acne. Probably the easiest thing to measure is going to be your motivation to train. If you usually are really excited by training, you love training, you really like to do it, it's the highlight of your day, and you've been training hard, and suddenly you don't really like training, you don't get excited about it, you don't really want to do it anymore, that is also a big red flag. Honestly, with running, it got to the point where I hated it. I just hated it. And even the thought of running would just make me want to vomit, honestly. Just because I was so overtrained and just so destroyed that the thought of doing something that I loved before, I couldn't even handle. The thought of it kind of disgusted me, to be honest. So, measuring your motivation and your desire to train is going to be probably the easiest and best way to decide whether you should keep training hard. Another one is going to be your appetite. So if you're training hard with weights and you want to get bigger and stronger, your appetite should be pretty strong. Honestly, if you're squatting and deadlifting heavy and you set up your training properly, you should be very, very hungry. However, if your appetite just doesn't seem to be there, it's probably a sign that you're overdoing things. You're doing too much and your appetite has been killed because your body doesn't want to grow. If you do too much, let's say you do like 20 sets of 10 or something like that, just crazy, this might actually reduce your appetite because you're not growing because you did too much. All right, so now let's talk about the causes of overreaching and overtraining. You have to realize that the causes are the same for both. Overtraining is just a more extreme version of overreaching. So first you overreach, then you overreach more, then you are overtrained if you keep going down that path. Probably the number one cause is just going to be from doing too much. So if you're doing too much mileage as a runner or just doing too much volume as a weight trainer, just doing too much is going to just be too much damage to recover from. So if you're doing a lot of drop sets, a lot of partials like you see here, a lot of slow eccentrics, a lot of high intensity techniques for set after set after set, it's simply going to be too much muscle damage to recover from. Similarly, if you're just running far too much, you won't be able to recover. This isn't even an energy thing in most cases. It's not like a lack of glycogen. It's too much systemic inflammation. The inflammation is going to be the key, and if you are doing too much muscle damage, again, from running or from weight training, both of which cause muscle damage, your inflammation is going to be super high and you won't be able to recover. It's also worth noting that intensity is a huge factor. So for weightlifting, this means over 90% weights. If you are consistently and constantly maxing out, that is going to be extremely difficult to recover from for your central nervous system, but also for your muscles, your joints, and your peripheral nervous systems. For cardio or other endurance sports, this means something like sprinting. This is going to take a huge amount of effort and be massively taxing on, again, your muscles, your joints, and your nervous system. Also, sports that need to combine endurance as well as power and strength and muscle, so something like CrossFit or mixed martial arts, these are going to be very inherently open to overtraining. So if you're just doing bodybuilding, at least that's just one sort of facet. If you're just doing distance running, again, that's one thing that your body can do. But if you will have to do endurance and power and strength and technique work and other stuff, well, that's going to be extremely hard to recover from. And you just leave yourself a lot more open to overreaching as well as overtraining. Furthermore, too much frequency is also a really big one. If you give yourself that time to recover, then you'll recover and you'll get better. For example, if you are weight training 3 times per week, you can do damn near anything and still recover. And if it's twice per week, you could just destroy yourself every session and you should be fine. However, when you go up to training 5 times per week, 6 times per week, daily training, twice daily training, that's when it can be extremely difficult to recover, just because you're only getting a matter of hours between sessions. And you really do need to take that into account for your training. Volume, intensity, frequency. Those are going to be the big variables that you need to manipulate. And if you try to have them all super high all the time, and you're a very motivated, driven individual who pushes hard, well, you could absolutely get overreaching and overtraining. One thing to keep in mind is that you have a finite amount of training that you can recover from. However, this finite amount, it changes. It's not the same. So if you're sleeping well, if your diet is on point, if your stress is low, maybe it's just a quarantine and you're training at home and you don't have a job, you can train a ton and you can recover from a lot. However, if you're stressed out, if you are sick, if your sleep is not good, if your diet is crap, you're not eating enough food, you're not getting enough protein, all those factors means that your ability to recover is going to go down. And the amount of training that you can handle is also going to go down. So you have to realize that the amount of training that you can recover from, it's going to change. It's not always going to be the same. So not only does this change for each individual over time, based on stress, lifestyle, sleep, etc., but it's also going to be different for every person to start with. So how much training I can benefit from is going to be different from you, and it's going to be different from a world-class powerlifter, just based on the weights they are moving, how advanced they are, and hundreds of other factors. So you really do need to play it by ear. And if you're getting any of these symptoms on a regular basis, and if you're getting multiple symptoms on a regular basis, you should probably think about dialing back your training and taking a deload. It's better to deload too soon than too late, because if you deload too late, you just won't get any benefit from the training that you've been doing. So don't compare yourself to other people. Don't try to outwork other people. We are not machines. We are not robots. We are not made of metal. We are made of flesh and bone and blood. And all of these things take recovery, and they're different for every person. So if you find a program online, it might not be suitable for you. It might be too much. It might be too little. You need to make sure that you are adapting your training to yourself, or you have a coach who actually writes your plan for you. Otherwise, it is very easy to have suboptimal training. Alright, that is it for today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what videos that you want me to do. I have tons of ideas, but I also want to make the videos that you want to watch. If you don't want to watch it, I don't want to make it. So stay safe wherever you are, and I will see you next time. Peace.